Welcome to the GBF kitchen. I've got a very simple question for you today, and that's, do you like tomatoes? Lots of people don't like them. They're watery, they're insipid, they're a little bit white and pale and uninteresting. I used to hate them, and I'm going to tell you what made me love them later on in this video. But for now, I want to tell you what makes a great tomato. So the ones from abroad tend to come from the Netherlands, or they'll come from Spain. They're picked unripe when they're not very nice, packed with gas, shipped over here, and they may or may not ripen up a little bit on the way. That's not a real tomato. A real tomato should have so much herbaceous flavour, it should be sweet, it should be savoury, it should just make your mouth water. And that's exactly what these tomatoes do here. These are from the Isle of Wight Tomato Company, and in the Great British Food Awards 2024, our head judge of fruit and veg, none other than Simon Rogan, judged them a gold. So that's quite the accolade, I think. And they are grown on the Isle of Wight, obviously, it says it on the box. And the microclimate of the Isle of Wight and the soil and the sea air just all come together to make a superb product. And what's great about these tomatoes is they pick them at the peak of ripeness. They do not pick them when they're underripe. These tomatoes, which arrive, by the way, in this lovely eco-friendly packaging, will come to you just at the point of perfection. So a good tomato should, when you squeeze it, have a bit of give, and the green part on top should just be able to twist away. You shouldn't need to pull it very much. There shouldn't be much resistance. That is a good tomato. Also, look how red this is. It's so beautiful. It's a scarlet colour. Now, the Isle of Wight Tomato Company, they grow 40 varieties. So whether you want a red tomato, a yellow tomato, a black tomato, a green tomato, a stripy tomato, they have got you covered throughout the year. So now I'm going to take some of these tomatoes from the Isle of Wight, and I'm going to create some of my favourite dishes. If you say you don't like tomatoes, I guarantee you will like at least one of these dishes I'm going to prepare today. Okay, first up, I'm going to introduce you to the dish that made me love tomatoes. Before I had this, I detested tomatoes. My dad grows them on the allotment, tried to feed me all the way through my childhood with these tomatoes he'd grown on the plot. The only way I'd eat them, like lots of people, is in a tomato sauce or on a pizza. So picture the scene. 4 ladies, a little bit tipsy from Stansted Airport, a pre-flight tipple. We arrive in Madrid. We go through the park with our luggage. It's 40 degrees. Even the Spanish are saying this is too hot for us. We're weary. We just want to go and put our feet up and lie in our beds in our apartment. We didn't have time for that. So we fall into a bar. They give us a jug of sangria and they bring this plate of pan con tomate. Sorry for any Spanish people watching. It's not my first language, I do apologise. In Catalonia, it's also known as pan amb tomate. And it's so simple. It basically just is tomatoes and bread, but I'm going to show you why it's so much more special than that. Okay, this is so simple. You could make it in a minute or maybe a couple of minutes. Let's see how we go. So I've just got a clove of garlic. I've cut it in half. Got a piece of my crusty bread, and I'm just going to rub it on top. You don't need to chop it up. This will just give it a nice garlicky flavour. Stick on as much as you can. I like it really garlicky. That's that. Okay, and then we've got one of the tomatoes. Just cut it in half and use a serrated knife. Don't use your finest big chef's knife. It's just going to squash through the tomato, and you can buy a special tomato knife. They're about this long, nice fine serrated edge, and they'll go through like butter. So I've cut this in half. There we go, look how pretty it is inside. And all we're going to do, and there's 2 methods to this, so you can either squeeze this on or you just rub it. And that just gives the tomato flavour to the bread. And this is what they will typically do in Spain. So some restaurants in the UK will chop the tomato up, but if you just give it a good rub, that is the traditional way. Okay, and then quite simply, all we do is drizzle some olive oil, being quite generous there. Grind of salt, grind of pepper. And then just for fun, I'm going to lay some Serrano ham over the top. And it really is that simple. So this is going to give you the sweetness of the tomato, a pepperiness from the olive oil, and that hint of garlic, and then a bit of salt from the ham, and it's such a delicious and easy summer dish. So next up we're going to make a fresh Asian style chutney. This is a little bit different to the chutney we might make over here in the UK. So over here we associate chutney with loads of sugar, loads of vinegar, lots of sort of cinnamon and ginger, those kind of spices. This is a bit more fragrant, a bit more heady, and it's designed to really go with your curry that night just after you've made it, or stick it in the fridge and put it in a cheese toastie or with anything really. It will last for about a week in the fridge in a sealed container. And the reason why it works so well with these Isle of Wight tomatoes is that they are naturally sweet. There's only about a teaspoon of added sugar in this. So also it's good for diabetics, anyone who's watching the sugar in their diet. It's quite a nice one to try at home. So to start off with, I've got 500 grams of Isle of Wight tomatoes here, which are very roughly chopped, again with a serrated blade. So I'm just going to finish these off. Just chop them really roughly, they don't need to be fine, they're going to cook down in the pan anyway. Okay, so to start off with, I've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil here. I like using olive oil at home because it's nice and healthy. You could use ghee or you could use some coconut oil, both of those will work perfectly well. In this bowl, I've got 2 roughly chopped green chilies, 4 cloves of garlic finely sliced, and a teaspoon of sugar. You don't have to use that, especially if they're as sweet as these tomatoes are. And half a teaspoon of fenugreek. Now fenugreek gives it that musty, aromatic flavour. It's kind of one of those spices you don't realise that it's missing until you try something with it in. So we're going to add this. Lovely. And then we're going to go in with our tomatoes. So we're just going to cook this on a medium heat just for about 8 to 10 minutes until the tomatoes start to break down. So as you can see, the tomatoes have broken down quite nicely and this is nice and liquid now. And we're just ready for the next stage of the process. Okay, so now it's broken down a bit, what we're going to do is we're going to take this off the heat and we're going to temper some onions and some other spices. So I've got my frying pan over here. I'm going to add some more oil. So we already want about half a centimetre worth in the pan, which sounds like quite a lot, but remember you don't have sugar in this. Okay, so we're going to put some oil in. I've got 1 roughly chopped onion, and then I've got 20 dried curry leaves and a teaspoon of mustard seeds. Again, curry leaves are one of those things that some people might go, do you know what, I haven't got it in the cupboard, I'm going to leave it out. But like fenugreek, they give that really bosky, aromatic flavour to Asian food, and I really recommend getting them. It's not very expensive and well worth having in the cupboard. So we're just going to add this to here, and we're going to fry these on a gentle heat until they're translucent. So it's smelling pretty good in the studio right now. As you can see, the onions have broken down. They're quite soft. I can get a wooden spoon through them. They're not coloured. If you take them too coloured and make them too golden, they're going to be a bit too sweet and sometimes bitter. This is the perfect state that they should be in. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add all of the onions and spices into the other mixture with about half of the oil in here. And what you can do is you can keep the rest of the oil and put it in a jar, and you can use that for frying other things later in the week. It's got a really beautiful aroma. Right, so yeah, here we go. Let's just add this in here. So like I said, we're going to retain about half of the oil in the pan just to use later on in the week. Really good to cook some fish actually. So that's all gone in there. Lovely, lovely. Give it a good stir. Now what you can do at this point is you could blitz it if you wanted to, but I quite like to leave it chunky. And you could, if you wanted to, put it back on the hob to thicken it slightly. So as you can see, it's quite a loose texture, and that's what we really want. And it will thicken in the fridge, so if you're leaving this and not eating it immediately, it will thicken up. And also, you just want to add a bit of salt and pepper, maybe a bit more sugar if you feel like it needs it. I'm just going to put a touch of salt in. Always add salt at the end. Quite a lot of people add salt at the beginning of cooking or throughout, but don't forget that salt is thickening and concentrating and reducing down. The more salt you add throughout the process, the more salty your sauce will be at the end. You want to re-salt it when you're finished, when it's just the right texture for you, and taste it then. Okay, so as I said, it's really important to season it at the end. So I've tasted it. I just think it needs just a tiny little grind more of salt and just a scant quarter of a teaspoon of sugar. It really doesn't need a great deal because these tomatoes are such good quality and they're already so sweet. You really don't need to add much more than that. So give it another stir. And you could have this straight away as a sauce actually with some white fish or with a bit of chicken, but otherwise just let it cool down, put it in a tub, pop it in the fridge, and it will make the most amazing cheese toasties, or put it alongside your curries, and actually the flavour after 2 days will be phenomenal. I'm just going to give it a try. So it's really sweet, and without really adding a lot of sugar at all. There's less than 3/4 teaspoon in this whole serving dish. The curry leaf gives that aromatic flavour with the mustard seeds, a little bit of sweetness from the caramelised onions. It's just a really good all-rounder, and you don't need to worry about sterilising jars. Just go ahead, you've got 7 days worth of chutney in this pan. So last up, we've got our super simple summer salad, which is quite a mouthful to say. So here we've got 6 really ripe Isle of Wight tomatoes, slice as thin as you can. Again, use a serrated knife like you have with the other dishes. And as you can see, they're so beautifully red under the skin. That's because they are so ripe and they're picked at the peak of perfection, which you're not going to find with most tomatoes. So everyone knows that basil goes with tomatoes. I mean, it's just one of those combinations that works globally. It's internationally known. But did you know that strawberries also go with tomatoes? Sounds a bit weird, but the acidity and the sweetness of the strawberry goes really well with the acidity and sweetness of the tomato. You add the peppery notes of the basil, and it is just perfection. A really lovely summer salad. This will feed 2 people. You can scale it up. So I've got about 300 grams of strawberries here, which I've chopped up very roughly, because you kind of want to retain some of the integrity of them. What I'm going to add to that is some balsamic vinegar, and I want to talk about a really interesting one here that I'm not going to use, but I've got some of the Isle of Wight tomatoes, oak smoked tomato balsamic. So I picked this up at a food stall somewhere in the summer, and this is so delicious. So it's balsamic infused with their smoked tomatoes, and it is just delicious. Used instead of Worcester sauce on cheese on toast, splashed into a bolognese or a braise or a casserole. It just gives that little bit of extra oomph and body. So I just want to recommend that while I had that here. We're going to put about a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar in with the strawberries. It really makes a difference, the quality that you're using. This is a very simple dish, but if you use the right ingredients, like the Isle of Wight tomatoes, really ripe strawberries, and a good balsamic, you're going to end up with a great result. So first of all, here I've got your bog standard balsamic you'll find in the supermarkets for about 3-4 quid. I am going to add a little tiny drop so you can see the consistency of this, but only a little bit. So this balsamic isn't really aged, and as you can see, it's quite thin. That isn't what we want. So what makes a really good balsamic vinegar is the viscosity. You want it to cling to the spoon. You want it to be really thick and syrupy, and you're kind of looking at about a 10-year to 15 or 20-year aged one for that. I've just got what was in my cupboard at home here, so this is just a supermarket own brand, but this one is 10 years old, and it's a proper Modena Balsamico. So you want to look for the Modena name and for it to have the IGP label on it, which is blue and yellow. A really good previous winner of the Great British Food Awards is Burren Balsamics. Their balsamic vinegars are superb. I would recommend those very highly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about a tablespoon of this in here, and you can just see the difference. It's just so much thicker, and this gives it a caramelised sweet flavour. Okay, and it already enhances the flavour of the strawberries. Balsamic and strawberries together are heavenly. So, and then I'm just going to add a pinch of sugar. So I'm going to pop that down. Doesn't need a great deal. This just smells like summer. You could eat this as it is without the tomatoes, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spoon this over the top. And what you want to do is leave this at room temperature for about half an hour to marinate. And to finish it off, I'm going to get a scant tablespoon of basil and just rip it over the top. If you cut it with scissors or a knife, the metal is going to taint the basil. It will go brown, so use your fingers always. That's a good tip. So it's going to tear this over the top, and it smells amazing in here. Behind the camera, they're kind of flocking to come and eat this. So sprinkle it over the top, and there we have it. It's a really simple summer salad, so fragrant. It smells gorgeous in here. Just serve this up with a little bit of black pepper on top. You could add some olive oil if you wanted to, some crusty bread on the side, and it's just gonna really make your mouth water and ignite all your senses and make you feel ready for the summer holidays. So there you have it, 3 super simple dishes that exemplify how beautiful Isle of Wight tomatoes and British tomatoes can be.